All right, all right. What's up, everybody? Joshua Smith here with my good friend, Ben Barber.
Hey, guys.
We're so excited and stoked to have you guys here on this training today. We're going to go really in depth with you guys on how to recession-proof your business. There's a lot of ways to do this. There's a lot of ways that Ben and I both have done this in our business. We'll go deeper on that here. But again, really stoked and honored to have you guys here. We are going to cover a lot of information today. And here's the most important part. I want you guys to be here, be present, make sure to close out of all different window browsers, put down your cell phone, turn your ringers off, like just be here, be fully engaged. And I want you guys to understand the overall concepts because there's some things that we are going to do and some resources that we're going to give you at the end of this training. So you don't have to worry about taking notes diligently. You don't have to worry if you miss anything that we're talking about because we're going to give you a copy of this slide deck. We're also going to give you Ben's most recent book that is specific on how to get into REO. And we're going to give you some resources to make sure that you guys have success after the training. Because we all know that, look, we can have the greatest information that exists out there, but if we don't implement and take action on the information that we've learned, then it's just wasted time. Right? We might as well just sit here all freaking watching Netflix videos, right? So you guys are investing, this time with us. We want to make sure that you have everything dialed in. So the most important part, again, be here, be present, and pay attention to the concepts. Don't get caught up in all the how-tos, right? Don't get caught up on worrying about taking notes of everything. We're going to give you a copy of the slide deck. We're going to give you all the resources that you need to go out there and kick ass with this. So I'm going to share my screen here, so we can get jumping in and get started rock and rolling with this. So again, you guys, we are here today to talk about 5 ways to get into REO and make your real estate business recession-proof. Now, we're also going to talk a little bit about short sales and some other things that you can do in addition to getting into REO. But this is so critical, you guys. One of the ways that Ben and I both been in the business for a long time, and we're going to share some backgrounds here in just a second with you guys. But we've both been able to grow our business regardless of the shifts that are taking place, right? Because at the end of the day, you guys, we are in the real estate business, right? Our job is, I look at myself as a residential real estate specialist. So my job is that's my product, right? Then, and I always say this, there's no such thing as a good market or a bad market. It's identifying whom the market is good for and transitioning my marketing, my prospecting, my energy, and my efforts to whom it's good for. There's going to be markets that it's great for traditional buyers and sellers, great for investors, great for short sales, REO. So we need to know how to move, shift, shake, and adapt this. But one important thing I want to share with you guys, even though if we look at the previous 7, 8 years, I mean the market's just been taking off. Well, we consistently in my real estate business, even though the majority is traditional business over the last few years, we still are doing distressed properties, right? It's not that stuff goes away. There's always hardship. So that people are experiencing where REO takes place, AKA a foreclosure, and people have a hardship where short sales can happen. So, I want you guys to keep that in mind. And Ben was just telling me a story of him having lunch with a good buddy of his that in 2019, still did in Florida $30 million worth of REO volume. And again, the majority of it is traditional business. They did like 70 million or whatever traditional, but it's still there. It's still business to be had. It's not like this is only there during market crashes, right? So I just want to make sure that you guys understand this. This can be a consistent leg to your business. So am I doing as many short sales and as many foreclosures as my team did during the Great Recession, the greatest housing market crash that we ever saw in 2008, 2009? No. At that time, I was getting about 90 to 100 REOs in short sales a month, right? So we're not doing that volume right now, but we're still doing about a half dozen a month, right? It can still be a consistent leg of your business that doesn't need to go away. So if we break that down and look at that, why REO? So if you look at Equator, which is one of the biggest systematic platforms out there that asset managers and outsourcers, it's almost like a CRM for these asset managers and outsourcers that can manage their tasks, and we can all communicate on that platform, and they're kind of the juggernaut in the industry. So Equator, which again is only one REO platform, manages 110,000 plus REO and short sale transactions every single year, which is over $16 billion worth of real estate, even during great markets, right? When we don't necessarily think REOs or foreclosures is a big part of the market. There's currently 1 million foreclosure filings per year, and the strongest real estate, even during the strongest real estate markets. Again, REO and short sales will always exist. So to make your real estate business 100% recession proof, you must learn to adapt and shift during different markets, right? Because as I said before, it's no such thing as a bad market. It's identifying whom is that market good for. And if we know how to do this, and by the end of this training, that's our goal today, is to make sure that you guys understand this and know how to do this. So then there's never a need, even though the economy may be down as a whole, right? We might be in a recession or a full blown out recession. Who knows how bad the economy may be. There's no reason that your business needs to suffer. There's no reason for that. We don't want to just survive every market. We want to kick ass and thrive in every market. And the other thing I want you guys to know is it's never a question of if, but it's always a question of when the market will correct. All right, so the structure for the training today, we're going to do a quick intro to who we are. We'll 60 seconds on that, you guys. We're not going to do a long drawn intro. Then we're going to go in depth and go deep. Or I should say Ben is going to go deep into the 5 different ways to get into REO and get REO listings to make yourself recession proof. And you understand why here in a minute, why Ben's going to be doing the majority of the training. He's really the brilliant mind, the most brilliant mind when it comes to REOs that I've ever met. And I asked him to be here on this training with us so we can all learn from him. He's my mentor when it comes to this space more so than anybody. Then we're going to do a quick intro to our REO University training program, not some glorified sales pitch, just letting you guys know that we have some advanced training. If you want it, cool. If not, that's okay too. And then we're going to give you instructions on how to download the slide deck, get a free copy of Ben's new book, and all of that. So again, we're going to give you a free copy of the REO Entrepreneur, so how to earn income and recession-proof your business. This is an in-depth book, and it talks. Some of the things that we discussed today are covered in here, but there's a lot of different ways other than just being a REO agent to create money and make money and create revenue centers in your business during these times. You know, right? They're looking for a lot of vendors, trash out companies, and so forth. So he really breaks down all the different ways that you and other members of your family, whatever, can get involved and, again, recession-proof your business. All right, so who is Ben Barber? So Ben Barber sold over 11,000 bank-owned assets. He worked for Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Chase, EMC, Bank United, Aurora, and VA. So during the Great Recession, you know, the times of 2008, 2009, they call it the Great Recession, but it was the greatest housing market, the worst housing market crash that we've ever seen as a nation. So Ben was on the opposite side that I was, you know, right? Like I was the agent, you know, representing my 35 banks and outsourcers. Now, Ben was one of the top asset managers in the country, to the point where he then was responsible for creating a lot of back-end operations and systems that Freddie Mac and the biggest institutions started to develop and still use now today. So again, he's written policies and procedures and internal training manuals for some of the biggest lenders in the country, designed task-based systems for Green River Capital and vendor resource management. He has approved and supervised over 2,000 cash for key transactions, published in Mortgage Banking Magazine on MSNBC.com, Chase EMC Big Cheese Award winner, which I have no idea what that is, but I'm guessing it's something cool. And then Green River Capital Process Improvement Challenge Award winner. So what's really cool, you guys, about the relationship that I've been able to develop with Ben, and why I said that he's, you know, my mentor when it comes to, well, in a lot of different ways, but, you know, also when it comes to the REO world, is, you know, that Ben, after the market corrected, he saw a huge opportunity. Him and his wife left kind of the asset management world. Ben was heavy in the asset management side, as you can see here, and his wife Kim was on the opposite side of it, right? So she was doing all the mitigation, you know, right, trying to save people's homes, working for some of the biggest institutions. So they both have had so much experience, whether it's REO foreclosure or on the short sale loan modification side. Well, they saw a lot of opportunity to go out there and create their own real estate team and develop their own real estate team, started their own real estate team years ago in Utah, and have just exploded as real estate agents now. So now Ben is able to share with me, and he's going to share with you guys today, stuff that he would have got fired for sharing as an asset manager. Now, there's a lot of things that I didn't know as an agent, you know, running my real estate team and doing all these REOs. like we get graded and get all these scorecards. Well, like I was like, dude, I don't get it. My mind, I don't get how I'm getting graded. It didn't make sense to me. I could never figure out how an asset manager actually got bonused and paid. Because look, at the end of the day, like we want to maximize. If I have a traditional seller, I want to get them as much as I possibly can for their house. Well, if my asset manager is my client, I want to make sure that they're hitting the biggest bonuses ever. Well, I was never able to get the information on how to go out there and capitalize that and do that and look out for them. So then, they could reciprocate and reward me for property. So a lot of the stuff that you guys are going to hear today is stuff that you'll never hear from an asset manager. Ben couldn't share until he quit and started, his real estate team himself, because again, this was proprietary information that they're just not allowed to share. So quick little background on me. So voted 30 top realtor in America by the Wall Street Journal, NAR's 30 under 30 finalists, top 1% of realtors worldwide, over 5,000 homes sold. Actually, over last year, we just hit our 6,000th home sale, over $1 billion of real estate sold. And during specific to REO and short sales, sold over 1,200 REOs and have represented over 30 banks and asset management companies, throughout the years. Own and operate the #1 real estate podcast in the industry, GSD Mode. Co-owner of a software company today called Perfect Storm, but I'm still in the trenches just like you guys every single day with my real estate team here in Phoenix, Arizona, selling over 600 homes annually. And I also coach and mentor thousands of real estate agents all over the United States and Canada. All right, you guys, with all that being said, man, I'm so stoked for this training. Honored to have you guys here, and I'm going to let Ben take it over from here.
Okay, awesome. Hey, I appreciate it, Josh. What's funny is I look at Josh's numbers, and every time, I like what I've done with real estate, and I always feel super stoked about it. But I just barely hit 50 million in real estate sales on the residential side in the last 4 years, and then I see this 1 billion. So still chasing that number, which is just awesome. So here's what I wanted to do, guys. I really wanted to give you an idea of what to expect, because when Josh and I created this, we really wanted to say, there are a lot of really good agents that are already getting REO, but there's also a lot of agents who are brand new to the business. That's probably the number one question I get, actually, is they're saying, I don't have a lot of experience. How can I get in? And I want to tell you that if you're new, that's fine, because we're going to give you effective strategies regardless of what your experiences is. I'm going to give you some solid bulletproof ways that you can get in and get your first REO listings. But I don't want to exclude anybody who is already getting that business. So with our REO University, which Josh is going to go over, we have specific tools on how to grow your business now that you're getting it. But with this training specifically, you're going to have some additional strategies, including one I'm going to show you that I think is where most people who are getting business are hurting their chances when they go to a trade show. So I'll show you that a little bit later on, okay? So Josh already went over this, but I just wanted to rehash it because the most common conception I've ever heard is that REO doesn't exist. And people always say that REO does not exist. So I want to address this little elephant in the room, that there's no REO. When I worked at VA, what impressed me the most is that when there were all these shifting markets and you had Fannie Mae and you had like Aurora and some of these companies kind of jumping over each other to offer more aggressive programs like no docs and NINAs, stated income, stated assets, all that stuff. And LTV started getting less, credit guidelines started getting less. Like I remember I was working for Credit Suisse at the time. I was managing a team of inside account executives, and they rolled out this no doc program where we only needed one credit limit established for 12 months with $1,000 as a high balance. So I thought, someone with a credit card, one credit card for $1,000 can go buy this $700,000 house on a no doc. For me, that was like the sign that things were going to start falling apart. I worked for the VA. I was an operations manager for the VA, and VA never changed their guidelines. Like they had an investor program that was 5% down, and they cut that out. But they never changed their guidelines for lending on owner-occupied homes. So they had this consistent foreclosure rates as far back as you can go. And that's what I wanted to talk about, is to kind of dispel this illusion that REO existed and will never exist again. So here's a traditional graph that you would look at. And this is what people would point out. They'd be like, dude, look at all this foreclosure activity and these sales that happened as this jump, right? So if you look at this goes all the way back to 2000 and 2018. There's this huge jump, there's this huge peak, but it's just all a matter of perspective, because that was an anomaly that was created. I mean, you can watch the Big Short movie. It actually tells very good information in there, but that was an anomaly that has been corrected. So if I remove that anomaly, this is what the REO trend looks like from 2000 to 2018. And I wanted to put this in here because, for me, I'm a very visual person. But I wanted you to see that this is what those sales look like when you go straight across the board. So the business is there, okay? Now, when we talk about you have 1 million foreclosures, those are in different phases, right? And then it transitions to the sales. This doesn't account for auction.com stuff. This doesn't account for if you have like a big hedge fund that comes in and snatches up these pools of assets, which a lot of them do. These are just your straight on the ground sales from some process. So you still have this inventory of foreclosures, like Josh said, that we're looking at about 1 million, and that's where it's tended to be. If you ever hear this term, the shadow inventory, it's just the inventory that's waiting to come out and go into the market there. So I just wanted you to see this because I wanted you to see that REO has always existed. It always will exist. And really that's why I had that up there. It is going to happen again eventually. And then it's just like Josh said, it's never a matter of if the market's going to correct. It's just a matter of when. And if we're smart agents and if we're protecting our business, the idea is to recession proof and to be ready for it, right? The last time to get into REO in 2008 was in 2008 and 2009. That's when all the people who had already done their homework were getting into the business, right? And then I wanted to show this when we talk about, a recession never coming again. This was actually taken from realtor.com of percentage of home shoppers that expect a recession to occur. So these aren't industry experts. These are like, what's buyer confidence right now? 53% of buyers right now think that there will be a recession in 2020, and then it kind of fades out. Now, this might be a catch-22. This is why you're running into some buyers that are like, hey, you know what? Something's going to happen in the market. You know how everybody's an expert on real estate all of a sudden, and they're like, nah, it's been going too well. It's going to crash. It's not saying that they're right. It's just saying that's where the consumer confidence is. So that's the mindset of the consumer. And then you've got the mindset of the experts. So even 40% of the experts are saying that we've been riding this wave for so long that eventually it's got to go down. So 40% of the experts, and I pulled this from, you can see right here, just this Pulsenomics Duke. So I didn't create that. I grabbed this from the presentation, but they had actually studied Wall Street Journal, Duke, all those guys, and they had said, we're going to pull our experts and see what they say. 40% say 2020, we've been riding a good wave, but expect a recession, and then the next highest is 2021, okay? So I want to talk about, this presentation is really about the REO Wave Cycle, and I want to show you how it kind of focuses and works for your business, okay? So with the REO, it just feeds through things. We start on this approved vendor. As an approved vendor, it doesn't matter if you're with one small credit union, if you've got a hedge fund client, or if you're, doing Fannie Direct. The first step is being an approved vendor. Then we start getting assignments. Based on those assignments, like Josh said, we're going to measure your performance with KPIs, key performance indicators. Not going to go deep on those yet, but just high level key performance indicators. You've got your net recovery, which is the sales price to your original list price, or your sales price to your original BPO value, be more specific. You also have your days on market, your days in escrow. We talked about net recovery. Those are some of the KPIs that an outsourcer or a bank is looking at when they're looking at assigning properties. So you're going to get in the business here. We're going to do some assignments, see how you do. Based on your performance, you're going to get more opportunity for listings, and then you're going to leverage that success and go get more clients. You're going to say, hey, look, I'm Fannie Direct. Here's all the success I've had. Boom, now let me go do Freddie. Let me go to the VA, right? So it's this cycle that's going to just keep feeding you all the way through, okay? What we're going to focus on in this training right now is this number one goal, which is just getting your foot in the door and becoming an approved vendor. That's the number one thing. So there are 5 ways. I've got 4 up here, but I'm going to show you the 5th one once we get to it. I honestly think I just accidentally deleted it and forgot to put it back in. So my apologies there. But the first thing we're going to do is talk about joining the vendor network. There's a couple ways we're going to do this. We are going to go apply directly, or we're going to be invited to apply. Those are the two strategies, okay? So who are we going to join? That's the number one question. Who are we going to join? We're going to join outsourcers. That's going to be like Phoenix Asset Management. You're going to look at Green River, which is now Radian. So Green River became Clayton, and now they're Radian. You'll also have Vendor Resource Management. So those are the direct outsourcers who have a client base that's feeding them REOs in some capacity. So you may have, okay, like Bank of America. or Wells Fargo is probably a better example. Wells Fargo does all their own eviction work. They do all their own front end stuff, and then they just hand it over to the asset management company to take it after that eviction's been completed and the title's clear. So an outsourcer may be working with Wells Fargo only from that point forward. Most of them are going to be a full service outsourcer. They're going to handle the eviction. If there's something wrong with title, they're going to take care of that. They're going to manage the HOA, repairs, all that stuff all the way through. So that's the first place I would go. You're going to want to go to those outsourcers because that's who you want a relationship with. That's who most of the banks are feeding. Direct servicers, I put that's going to be your Fannie Mae Direct. Okay. Freddie may move to that. I know they have some that do it. But those are your two biggest sources. I also put as a direct servicer, that could be your hedge funds. I listed those as a separate category because that's a different strategy to get in with those guys. BPO providers, you're going to see this increase more and more as the recession starts. So I always like to look at who's hiring. I like to go on to like Indeed, see who's hiring in the REO field. And if I see a BPO provider, like Clear Capital, if I see them start hiring, that's where I want to jump into, okay? Because I know that they exist there. And then your local credit unions. I think this is a spot. Sorry guys, I got a new mouse that's jumping all over. I personally think that the local credit unions are probably the most overlooked place to go get business right now, because everybody focuses on the big one. We're focused on the outsourcers, the direct, but we forget that we have local credit unions that are doing a ton of business, and they do have foreclosures, and that needs to be managed. And between us, not a lot of outsourcers are equipped to handle that, because the amount of work it takes to facilitate that client may not be worth it to them. But for somebody locally to go in and pick up all of their foreclosure stuff, 100%, that'll feed you for years. And then of course, hedge funds, because they are the hedge funds. I've worked with them directly when I was in the REO field. I would take them out for property inspections. We'd look at pre-foreclosure stuff. That's a great business to get into. Josh mentioned my buddy who did 30 million last year in REO. Now that was REO specific. He actually did another 20 million working with the hedge funds, selling stuff before it became REO. So, I mean, combined, he was like 50 million between hedge funds and REO. So huge opportunities out there for you, okay? When you are filling out the information for a vendor network, you're gonna have basically two ways that you can do it. This is an example for VRM. I put this up here. Theirs is probably the most straightforward application form that I've ever seen. And you're just going to put your information in. So if you're an agent, you want to start there. They may want to have a relationship with the broker. So like Freddie Mac wants a relationship with the broker. They want that broker to be in business for 5 years. So one of the questions I get is, I don't have a lot of experience. How do I join this vendor network? That's the first thing, is to understand who they're looking for. Because if they're just looking for agent information, put yours in there. There's ways that we can now structure your resume. Even if you've only sold one house, there's ways that we can structure that resume to mirror the KPIs that this outsourcer has. Okay, so I'm going to show you on the next slide an asset management company that just wants a resume, which that's where that would really help you if you're brand new. In this example, with the VA, when that account was set up, VRM basically followed Freddie's example, and I think primarily because Freddie was really their only other account. So a lot of the information just mirrored Freddie. Freddie had a relationship with the broker. VRM creates their network that says, give us your broker information. I know that you can put information in here if you're not the broker. But again, that's kind of a one-off. So I just want to show you this. Let's just interchange broker for agent when you're filling this out, okay? So we're just going to put our name, first name, last name, your license number, make sure you have that, the expiration date, and then here's what I want to tell you when you're filling this out. When you are putting in, I think we have it, oh, it's down here more. You want to put in, let's go through diversity information first. So put your contact information, even if you have a team, put your information, because asset managers want to talk to you. Now, it's okay if you're farming out your work and someone's doing the BPOs and someone's doing your occupancy inspections. That's fine. The relationship you have is with that asset manager. So if you look at Rasmus Real Estate in Georgia, that at one point, I know they had 700 homes that they were managing. Like this REO agent was so big, Sean and Judy Rasmus, they were so big that they actually had internal asset managers who were working with the external asset managers. Like, it was nuts. But if I ever needed something, I called Sean or I called Judy. That's who I called. Okay. So I didn't call their asset managers. I went specifically to them because that was my relationship. Okay. So you want to put your information in here because you want to manage that. You want to control your business. Even if you have a team, that's your information there. They're going to ask diversity information. Now, this has come up a lot more, and you have companies like Freddie Mac that are specifically saying they want to be able to employ as many diversity candidates as possible. And then you have others like VRM that won't tell you they want to, but they're looking at that information. So one of the biggest myths is that if you can't check off any of the diversity categories, you're not going to get the business. And that's just 100% not true. I want you to start looking at this as just trying to build a better foundation for your application and for your business, okay? If you can check off a box, all it's going to do is strengthen your application. If you can't check the box, that's fine. We just have to strengthen it somewhere else. Does that make sense? So we're going to offset. If I'm not a woman-owned business, that's fine. I'm going to offset that with my experience. I'm going to offset that with my KPIs, and I'll take my entire listing portfolio the whole time that I've been a retail sales agent, and I'm going to structure that just like I would if I was an asset manager. Like, I'm not going to say I sold 50 million. I'm going to say, let me take a look at that 50 million. I'm going to say my average net recovery for the last 4 years has been 98%. That's what I want, because that's what they identify with. Okay. And I'll show you all that stuff. But if you can check off a box, do it. If you can't, it's fine. We're going to strengthen it somewhere else. Okay. So these are the major ones. I haven't really seen any outsourcers looking outside of this. I know VA likes to work with veteran owned, not just for their agents, but also in their, like for their property pres. So if you can do it, fantastic. Again, if not, you don't need to, but just answer the information, but answer it honestly, because you may have to verify it. And then here's one thing that you want to pay attention to. This mouse can drive me nuts. Okay. When you're setting up, it used to be back in the day when Josh was just killing it with the REO. I mean, I can't even fathom 100 assignments. I mean, I had months where I'd get 100 new ones just as an asset manager, and it was difficult because they were so spread out, right? It started out like that in 2008. You could have as many assets as you wanted, as many as you could physically handle. That's what happened. And then we started seeing a lot of really bad agents, lazy agents, because that's like, you look at Las Vegas in 2009, 90% of assets that were listed were REO assets. So if you were a Vegas agent, the only way you were getting listings was REO. So that brought in a lot of agents that really didn't know the most about what they were doing, or they didn't manage it very well. So in response to that, a lot of the outsourcers started saying, okay, we're going to limit your production by geography, because what they were seeing is somebody would take an asset, like I'm in Utah. If my office was in Provo, I may take an asset that's in Ogden. Well, that's an hour and a half drive for me to get up there. So it's not being as serviced. I'm not going to do my occupancy inspections quickly. I'm not going to do my weekly check-ins. I may not know the market in Ogden as much as I know the market in Provo. So in response to that, they came and they said, okay, we're going to give you business, but we're going to put it around your geographical area. So if you want business in Phoenix, you're not going to put Surprise as your office. That's the advantage if you're working with, I mean, if that's your only office, by all means, that's what you have to put. Otherwise, I would rent a small office, honestly, where you want to be, because they're going to put a radius of 5 to 10 miles around that primary office location, okay? So just keep that in mind as you're setting this up. My broker is Realty One. We have an office in Vernal, which is like 3 hours away from here. We have one in South Jordan. We have one coming up here in Farmington. For all of my stuff, my office is the South Jordan office for any applications that I'm putting in for REO, because that's in the heart of Salt Lake, okay? So they're going to put my REO business, even though, like, because for me, I'm 20 miles away, that's nothing here. I want the business I want to be in the highest concentrated area. So that's where I put my office address. And then I can just take the business. So just be mindful when you're putting this information together, okay? These are the easiest ones to talk. This is what I was talking about a little earlier. You're going to have a lot that just say, hey, just send us your resume. And if that's the case, then the way we're structuring our resume is we're hitting the KPIs. So you're looking at, by all means, you want to see your volume, you want to see the units that you've done. But if you don't have big volume, if you don't have big units, then you want to come in and you want to say, hey, look, I'm going to break this down. So my average list price was 300,000. My average sold price was 298,000. You want to do that math and say my net recovery has been 99.86%. Like, you want to show those numbers. If it took you 14 days to get a contract, and you want to say Average days on market, 14 days. Okay, if you want to say that's how they consider theirs, just to a contract. Another KPI is days in inventory. So how long did you have that asset before it closed? So I put it under in 2 weeks. It was a conventional buyer. We closed in 30 days. It took me 45 days. So now that KPI is your days in inventory less than 45 days. Does that make sense? You'd want to break your whole portfolio down in this manner so that you're hitting what is important to them, right? Net recovery, days in inventory, days on market, because aged asset is kind of the biggest killer. When Josh was talking about how asset managers are bonused, most of their bonuses wiped away from aged assets. Those are the biggest deals. So you want to show how fast you do things, how fast you move them through the system. If you don't have experience, you can still land assets because we're going to structure that resume the correct way to get attention and get your foot in the door. So that's why it's an advantage when they come through and they say, hey, just email your information over, okay? So those are the two ways that we're basically going to get in the door, but we're going to do it by being invited or by submitting our stuff directly, all right? And I hit this, I just want to reiterate this. If I don't qualify for any diversity categories, should I get a partner? The answer is no. You just want to be able to check as many boxes as possible in one way or another. So again, just strengthen it. That's what you're looking at, is that we want to strengthen it. If we can't check any boxes, if we don't have any sales at all, if we don't have any categories that we can check off, then you can strengthen it by now partnering with somebody who does have sales. So if I'm brand new and I know that I want to do REO and I'm in Utah, I'm going to go see William Bustos because his company does $50 million in REO production every year. He's got a great big network. That's with him. He lost the Freddie account like 3 years ago and still just crushes it. So if I was saying, hey, I'm brand new, I can't check any boxes, I have no experience, I'm a brand new agent, I haven't done anything, I'm going to go work with William. I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to come learn from you, show me how to do this. And now as I start getting results and I start getting experience and I can start checking some boxes, now I move out and I'm on my own. Okay, so just remember that. You just want to check boxes. How often should I apply? That's a really good one. So one of the challenges I think, and I know that Josh and I have had conversations on this because, you know, it's funny how with REO, I hear people say, well, I applied and nobody got back to me. And I always think that's really funny because, you know, we don't go farm an area and then get upset because nobody, like every single person didn't want to sell a home with us. And we don't reach our SOI and then be like, this doesn't work. I posted in Facebook and nobody I know wants to work with me. We just don't do that. But when it comes to submitting applications, that's exactly what the mindset is. They're like, well, I applied to work with VRM and they haven't got back to me. So one and done, right? It doesn't work like that. You want to have a system to follow up and be consistent, resubmit, but also not to the point where you're annoying. We don't want to submit it Monday, call Tuesday, resubmit Wednesday, call Thursday, resubmit Friday. We don't want to do that. We want to have a plan of attack. So this is what I would do. I would call 3 to 5 days after submission, and you're going to call the vendor manager. That's who's going to go through. So even if an asset manager wants to reassign a property to you and you're not currently in the system, and then they would say, the conversation would basically be, I can't assign this asset to you till you're in the system. I'm going to send you a link. I need you to go fill it out. You go fill it out, submit it. It's still going to go through the vendor management division, through the vendor manager and anybody that's working for them. We're just going to want to call and we just want to say, I just want to talk to the vendor management department, politely introduce yourself. I do not want to bother you. I just wanted to check to make sure you got my application and make sure it's all there. That's what we're looking for. Just want to make sure you got all the information, that I completed that correctly, that you got all the information you need from me, okay? I would do that 3 to 5 days after to make sure they have it. If they didn't get it, hey, so sorry about that. I'm going to resubmit this now. Do you mind if I follow up with you in 3 to 5 days? So we're asking for permission. We're getting the okay. Now we have a direct contact with the vendor network, okay? Ask questions about the application process, but really remember, guys, we're doing sales. Like this is a seller. We're trying to land them. We're putting on our, we're putting on our smiley face and we're going out and we're just asking questions. We're not demanding to know when will be reviewed. We just want to say, how's business? You guys super busy? What's that application process look like? What's the time frame? I definitely don't want to bother you. Should I follow up in 2 weeks or do you think I'll hear by then? We want to ask questions to get the information so that we can then set our future pacing based off their responses without being annoying, but also holding them accountable some timelines too. Okay. Set your follow-up accordingly. And then if you are not hearing anything from anybody, I say submit every 60 to 90 days. Okay. I tend to look at things in 30, 60, and 90-day blocks because in the asset manager world, that's how things focus. If I've been in eviction for longer than 30 days, something's wrong. If I've been on the market for 30 days, I'm going to do my first price reduction. If an agent's had the asset for 60 days and I don't have an offer, I'm looking at reassigning. If I go 90 days and I haven't sold this, I'm doing a new BPO. They think in 30, 60, 90-day blocks. Okay, so that's how I would set that up. If you haven't heard, that's why I put the 60 as a start. Give them some time, right? Because that is a department that can be overwhelmed. And you definitely want to give them a little bit of time. Don't be annoying, but 60 days is a good time to say, okay, I haven't heard. Now I'm going to resubmit. Okay. How do I know where to apply? This is a fantastic question. The business itself is very interesting in that it changes a lot. You have asset managers that are constantly going to different companies. You have companies that are merging, buying somebody out. It can be a very fickle business. If you have one outsourcer and their primary business is VA, and then VA puts out a request for offers, like, so basically the VA reassigns contracts every 5 years. Some do it sooner. Most of them will do it every 3 years at a minimum, because so much goes into setting that account up. But so what that means is that if VA comes out in 5 years and they say, okay, we worked with VRM for 5 years, now we're going to put a request, and any outsourcer that's out there can actually bid for our business. Well, if VA is the only business for VRM and then they award the contract to somebody else, that outsourcer may go out of business. You want to know where that business went to. You want to have a good relationship with VRM and have done business with the VA in this example, so that if they now assign it to Ben's real estate company, you can come and apply to work with me, and you can say, I've worked on VA before when you were with VRM. It's constantly changing, though. That's kind of the point I'm trying to make in a really roundabout way. So as you're going through, I would say Google search, like Google everything. I realize being adult is basically just Googling things and watching stuff on YouTube anyway. So Google search outsourcer list. That's a fantastic one. We have one that's available in REO University that is scrubbed annually, and we look at who are all the outsourcers, BPO providers, prop pres, vendors, things like that. But trade shows is a fantastic one. So you'll have probably the biggest one is a 5-star that's in Dallas every year, and they still, even in the best market, they're still getting, I don't know, 2,000 agents, and they have vendors from all over the country that come there, and that's where you can actually meet asset managers directly, fill vendor applications out right there on the spot. A lot of times they'll have someone from vendor management right there to meet you and to walk you through the application process. Okay, so definitely trade shows. Then you're going to want to work your referral network, LinkedIn, and then creating your own REO lists. So this is just an example. This is the list that I keep. And I just go, and whenever I hear that something has been happening, this is where I'll jump onto my list. I keep it in Google on a drive, and then I can share it with Josh. I can share it with anybody on my team. I can share it with anybody that's in REO University. And basically what it's doing is I'm keeping track of, so here's, I guess this one doesn't really show as much because I have a lot of companies on here that are no longer in business. But the reason I do that is because I don't want to have to scrub through somebody that I know is out of business. So this list I have is actually like, I think it's 287 names on here, because I'm looking at who the company is. If they've gone out of business, then my information is going to be went out of business or who they sold to, because I want to have that information so that as I get more resources, I can immediately jump to my list and say, do I have information for these guys? Yes, I do. You'll find that like when you do that Google search, it may pull up companies that are no longer in business. So I want to see that and know that I've already tried to reach out to them, okay? I keep this as a list for everything. You'll notice over here, I've got ResNet, right? Well, ResNet is they're a platform just like Equator is. So I keep that in there because I want to know. This is just like my end all be all list, okay? And then I've got notes on them. I've got their website. This one that you can't see over here, that's directly where you would apply. Like that's the actual application link. And then if I know people there, I might put it on. All right. So that's your thing. Just keep a list. That's kind of what I was trying to make a point of there. The second one though is I created this little graph because I started thinking about REO and I started thinking about what's the best way to get the business. And I came up with this model that basically gives you 3 opportunities or 3 phases. Okay, so the first one you have are going to be your direct opportunities. You have on-site trading. So VRM, they primarily do it when they run 5-star, because 5-star is in Dallas, VRM is in Carrollton, which is like 10 minutes away. So whenever they have 5-star, they say, hey, now's a great chance to train agents on how we want our BPOs completed. So they charge $99 and you can go through VRMU and you can go directly to their corporate site, and their training department will actually show the agents exactly how they want everything done. The advantage here is that as they're doing that, they're actually going to walk asset managers down to meet you. They may take you upstairs to meet the asset managers and the closers and accounting and the operations managers and the VPs. So once you're there and you've invested in them and you've said, hey, here's my $100, show me how to do your BPO, they want to reward that by walking you through, and now you're in, right? They're going to help you submit the applications, and it's a better way to get into their network. Another way is company charities. So again, I'm going to use VRM as an example. They hold an annual golf charity, and they're looking for any kind of donations, and they're also looking for help at the event. So if I was in Dallas, every time they held that event, I would reach out to, they actually have a separate charity division with VRM. I would actually reach out to them and I would say, how can I help? What do you need from me? Okay, because I'm networking now. These are direct opportunities because now you're interacting directly with the outsourcer or the bank or the credit union. This is more geared towards the outsourcers, but trade show, like I said, you 5-star, go to 5-star. You're going to meet the people who are actually looking for agents. That's where you want to be. Company event. I put company event because you have like Clayton before they were Radian. So I'm just going to say Radian now. Radian every year has a symposium, and they basically bring in all of their agents and they do this training. It's a 3-day training where they walk through. And the first time that we did it with Green River was years ago when I managed the eviction department. And we would have, I don't know, 300 to 500 agents in a room, and everything had a specific thing. So I was in charge of talking about evictions and cash for keys and all that stuff. And then they would go over and they would learn about REO Connects, which was the software system that we were working, or they'd have something on Equator because we were using that too, and ResNet just with the different clients. So then they'd go train on that, and then they'd go train on marketing, and then they'd go train on compliance and stuff like that. That's a company event where they released it for their agents, but you could also sign up and just go to it and just learn. That's a great opportunity to network and get to know people because you're actually at their company event. Okay, so the symposium is a great way. And then that's why I put those two could probably be interchanged, but it's just meet and greet. Anytime you have an opportunity to directly meet somebody from the company that you're trying to submit an application with, you want to jump on that. So that means going to their events, going to the trade shows, anything that they're saying where they're going to have people from their company actually out there shaking hands, that's where you want to go to, okay? Because you're strengthening that. And I know from an asset manager perspective, I had a kind of reputation that if I was very successful because I was very aggressive. And especially after I got done managing evictions, I was even more aggressive with certain things. But for me, it was not hard to release an agent and take their whole portfolio if things were not going correctly. But it was very hard for me to reassign a portfolio from somebody that I had a relationship, even if I had just met them one time face to face, because now they were a person to me before they were just a name. Okay, so definitely want to go to the meet and greet. So this is my first level. This is just your direct opportunities where you're actually with the outsourcer face to face, talking with them. So I always tend to get ahead of myself. I don't know why. We just covered all this stuff. Green River Capital, the symposium, again, now they're Radian. The 5-star conference, REO Mac, NRBA, and then US REO Partners has industry events that you can go to. This is just an example. This is VRMU. So this is what I was talking about the other day where they talk about, we actually have this training. It's $99. Expert-led training focused on keys to mastering BPOs and appraisals. I would pay that $100 so that I could get into VRM's building and meet everybody that's there, okay? So, and again, Josh says, so don't worry about taking notes. We're going to give you a link that you can download this stuff. Just remember, Green River is now Radian. Okay. This is why I love 5-star. So this is a link. I believe this was 5-star. It just shows you some of the exhibitors are going to be there. So look who we have. We have Equator. VRM is there. REO Network, Clear Capital, Phoenix Asset Management, right? All the way through. So that's why you want to go to industry events, because you have these people that are there and they're staffed up and you can meet them directly. But here's what I want to tell you. So this is for I mean, this is always good advice for the new people, but this is for the people that have been doing it for a while that drove me nuts every time I was in an event. And I don't think anybody realized the impact that this had after they left the event. When you are meeting these outsourcers, I don't care if it's the secretary, if it's billing, or if it is the CEO, don't gripe and complain. This is not the avenue for that. Don't tell them war stories. Don't talk about how hard it was to get their deal done unless it leads to a happy ending where you're like, I'm so glad I could do that for you. Thanks so much for trusting me to get that violation cured so that we could sell your property. If it's a good, happy story, by all means tell it, but don't talk to them about how, oh, I've been trying to get deals forever. And then the first one you gave me, I couldn't even get the people out and you reassigned it. All you're going to do is just reiterate this bad impression that they have. You do not want to do that. So you want to smile, shake hands, and sign up. That's your goal. Okay. Asset managers have actually come back from industry events and they have completely changed their mind about agents in a negative way based on these war stories and the griping and the complaining. And it was interesting because one of the number one things that I would hear is they would complain about departments that I had no control over. So they'd talk about somebody in eviction not responding to them, but I was an asset manager, I couldn't help it. Or I'd hear about it was taking longer to get reimbursed for their utilities, but I couldn't do anything about that. I wasn't in accounting. So don't gripe, don't complain, don't tell war stories. Remember, you're trying to land a client. You want to smile, shake hands, sign up. This is the advice that I always give people. This is kind of how I do it when I'm doing a listing presentation too. I want to be interested, but not interesting, right? What I mean by that is, have you guys ever had this situation where somebody tells you something they're super proud of, right? And they're like, I don't know, like I sold 2 homes last month. Let's just say that. It was my first, I'm out there. I finally closed multiple transactions in a month. I did it. Awesome. And then somebody else right immediately says, oh dude, last month I sold 10 homes, right? And now this person who just had the success story is like, oh shit, mine sucks. Like we're always one-upping people negatively and positively. If you're talking about how sick you were last week, someone's going to tell you how sick they were a month ago, or somebody they knew who was even worse, or somebody who died from some kind of sickness. And if you talk about how you just had your best year ever, someone had a better year, right? So that's why I say be interested, but not interesting, where I want to ask questions and hear about their business. And I don't want to one up them either way. I want to just nod, smile. A lot of this comes from How to Win Friends and Influence People. Like read that book and apply that, because these are just clients. Let the asset manager, vendor manager, eviction manager, whoever they are, let them talk just like you would with a traditional client. Because honestly, guys, they don't get out of the office much. Like I was just at I was having drinks with, I think we had 3 asset managers and then a couple other people that were from Clayton. And they just love to just get out and talk. And even though most of their conversation outside of work was still work related, they just wanted to talk. So just let them talk, be a part of the stories. Don't make it all about you, okay? With this next one, we have indirect opportunities. Now, this is where I started looking, I started saying, okay, so the number one line is going to be your direct ones where you've talked directly with the outsourcer. But you're gonna have indirect opportunities. Like who do you know that has worked or that currently works for this outsourcer? Who's a contractor for them? Who's a servicer vendor? Who's their counsel? Who's their attorneys? Who's a consultant for them? Because these are people that have their ear. These are people that have a way to find out who you need to talk to, okay? So get to know these people, and that will give you another way into this network. Ask for introductions. So this is just a screenshot of my LinkedIn that I went to, and I just pulled this up. And look at my LinkedIn. So I've got Mike Ludi, who was one of the people I just had lunch with, senior asset manager. Okay. I've got an REO director, asset manager. You can reach out and you can say, hey, I'm trying to get into VRM. Who do you know over there? And I'm just going to pull up my LinkedIn and be like, boom, here's who I know. Or I'm going to send you a number, or I'm going to send you an email. So reach out to your network and just say, I need an introduction. Who do you know? Okay. I technically, I think I would be on the next level of this thing that I have for you guys here. Yeah, because I'm on this. Oh, maybe I didn't put on there. Okay. So I was an ex-employee. So I think we can still put those in. So employees or ex-employees that still have connections in there, I would say the same thing goes. If someone was a prop pres vendor and they aren't any longer, it's still worth reaching out and saying, who did you know at VRM or wherever you're trying to get into, okay? That's a huge, huge advantage. Just ask your connections for an introduction or to help you, okay? So I've got indirect level 2, indirect level 3, and I was just brainstorming and I thought, there's always a way to get in. There's always a way to find someone. Like what Kevin Bacon have, the 3 degrees of separation, that within 3 levels of acquaintances, we can get to anybody. So that's when I was like, well, who's their landlord, their commercial landlord? Who sold them the property? Who do they bank with? Who's their travel? Like most of these guys have corporate travel agents. Who is that? Who manages their payroll, insurance? Who's their supplier? Who delivers office supplies? Like where do they get their paper from and their pens? Who comes out and fixes their desks or puts their desks together, right? You just have to be very creative and say, I'm going to create this huge net and just find any way I can to get an introduction into this network. So that's why I put all these things through, like even like who's their UPS, who's dropping these things off, because they know somebody in the business, right? So pay attention to that stuff, okay? That was our network like crazy, and then BPOs. So I like this. I like this BPO strategy for a couple reasons. There's direct benefits. There's indirect benefits. Directly, number one, you get to work with the outsourcer, even though you don't realize it. So a lot of the outsourcers, the way they're going to work, back in the day in 2008, they would actually. It was really interesting. When I started as a pre-marketer, we would call through agents and we would say, hey, I need a BPO done. If you can do it for free now, I promise on the next one you do, you'll be the listing agent. And that's like how we worked. We had this spreadsheet where we're just like, nope, I already asked them for a free one. I haven't given them a listing yet, so I can't ask them. I got to give them a listing first. It was a very, very complicated way of managing it. As it got busier, the outsourcers went to this model where they said, we're going to pick a listing agent and get a BPO from them. And then we're going to get an independent, either BPO or appraisal from a third party. And they realized they'd have to start paying for it. So that's why you see BPO companies that will actually provide this. BPO companies will also do big pool valuations like desktop reviews for hedge funds that are looking to come in and buy $100 million worth of properties. And then they're going to go to a BPO company and they're going to say, I need all, 200 of these properties evaluated so I can look at what this whole portfolio is. So you may get just a desktop one where you don't even have to go out. You can just sit here and in 10 minutes bang out a BPO. But what you don't realize is that you're getting a direct benefit because even though you're submitting your BPO to the BPO provider, your name, all your information, and your skill at being able to value a property is going directly to the outsourcer. So somebody, whether you have a valuation department that's scrubbing that and putting together the as-is value, or it's going directly to the asset manager to scrub that information, they're seeing your name and they're seeing the quality of your work. So I put that as a direct benefit because they're seeing how well you do, okay? Your BPO is in the hands of the asset manager. They get to directly compare your value against the agent, which is key. It allows you to build your network, shortcut to REO through reassignments. When I was looking at reassigning an asset, if I was doing it because the listing agent missed the value, the first person I looked at was who did this BPO. And if their BPO supported the value that I thought the property was at, I looked to see if I could get the BPO agent assigned to my property. Okay, so I think it's a great shortcut to get over there. Indirect benefit, it gives you immediate income. You're going to earn $50 to $75 per one you do. I know it's not enough to build your fortune, but it's enough to just get started. You're getting paid to gain experience. So that's why I love that. When I first got in, that was the number one thing I did is I got very good at valuing properties, and I would just, every chance I could, I'd value a property. If somebody else got an assignment, I didn't care. I would go value the property. I would pull up their BPOs and I'd see if I came to the same list price that they did. That's what I wanted to know. I wanted to get good at my values. It's a paid education. They're paying you to learn how to value properties, which is the most important characteristic in the REO world, hands down. Firsthand knowledge of the coming soon REO. I love this. Like every time someone asks me to go do a BPO, the number one thing I think is, I know a property is about to hit the market. So I'm going to get ready. And if I have investors, I'm going to say, hey, this thing's going to get ready. This thing's going to come out. And I can start doing my whole valuation on it before they've even hit the market with it. I can do my as-is value. I can turn it in. I can then turn around and do a repaired value and see what the cost was. And I'm ready to go. Okay. And then you increase your market knowledge. That's just through experience. And then also, those BPOs may take you to areas that you don't really work a lot. So it just increases your market knowledge, makes you more valuable. Okay. How much does a BPO pay? We already said that, about $50, typically $75. If it's like a rural location or if it's a rush, you might get up to like $125. And how do you turn it into a listing? That's one of the number one questions I get. We had gone over that where we're looking at right over here. This is going to be your number way. A BPO will turn into a listing via assignment. So you want it to be the most bulletproof valuation you can do. So that if that asset manager comes, if it comes time to reassign, they look at your value. And if your value is right, you can pick up that listing. How long does it take to complete? They can be a little more cumbersome when you're actually putting the information into the system. That's kind of the hardest part because every system is different. And a lot of times they want to see your adjustments, for bedroom, bathroom, square footage, above grade square footage, conditions, stuff like that. That can be a little tedious. Taking the photos, they're all pretty standard photos. Doing the valuation part isn't too long, but I would say it would take you at least an hour, maybe. It shouldn't take you more than an hour to get everything in, but there's going to be some drive time to factor in. So the nice thing about that is when someone gives you a BPO, you can structure it through your day. So while you're out doing other things, you can grab the information. I've seen a lot of people that do BPOs, or even when they're doing BPOs for like a listing that they're going to have, they'll do the search of the property, and then send send an admin to take photos or to put all the information in the computer. But you're looking about an hour to get it all done. We talked about how to turn it into a listing. Cool. All right. So then we've got the short sale superstar, and this is one that I love this category. So let me show you some things we have here, some strategies for you guys. If the property goes through eviction, the best part about being this show, I don't think I jumped a slide. I knew I did. Okay. Sorry, again, this is a little sticky here. I think this is the fastest avenue to pick up your REO listings if you don't succeed with the sale first. And that's the advantage of it. If you succeed with the sale, then you were able to sell the short sale, you made that commission. But it also gave you firsthand knowledge of who the bank is, because you had to work with the bank during the short sale negotiations, right? So now I can take that information, I can put it on my list, and I know, like, I'm just building this huge database of contacts. So first, you're trying to sell the asset. And if you can sell it with the short sale, just make commission, fantastic. But if you don't, the property is now going to go through eviction, most likely. If it goes through eviction, you already have a direct relationship with the occupant, right? Evictions is one of the biggest pain points in the entire REO process. There's a lot of times, like, you get moratoriums at the end of the year where they say, hey, from November 15th all the way through January, you're not going to do any evictions. If you have certain things, like I had an eviction once that was on tribal land. It was 10 years last time I heard about it. This thing was never going to be resolved. Companies will offer aggressive cash for keys to avoid the time delays, because they have to buy. I don't know if you guys know how the foreclosure process works, but it's not, they don't get foreclosed on and then they just say, hey, here's your asset, you can have it back. The foreclosure company goes and they have their minimum reserve. Anybody can go in and buy it. You can bid for it. But the bank actually goes out and bids for it themselves. And what they're saying is, if nobody covers my reserve, I'm basically buying that back. So they're borrowing money either from themselves or from a third party to cover that and bring it back in and resolve that debt. And then they have this carrying cost until it's actually sold. So if you're an eviction, the average, I think it was like $30 a day is what the carrying cost gets down to. So if you have a property that's an eviction, that's $900, almost $1,000 a month, that it's just sitting there, not like costing the bank money. So you're like, well, $1,000, that's not a big deal. Well, if you have 2,000 assets that are in eviction, it's now a very big deal, because now it's costing $2 million a month because those assets aren't moving. So if you have a relationship with the owner because you've been managing their short sale, it's more likely that you're going to be successful with your cash for keys or just getting them to vacate the property. And that's incredibly valuable skill to have for the outsourcers. So high probability of success with cash for keys, shorter days in eviction, also shorter days in pre-list, because those kind of tend to go hand in hand. Most outsourcers want to be through eviction in, I guess they give them a little longer, but it's 80 days, 90 days. Pre-list, they want to be done with pre-list in like 14 days. So it helps shorten all these cycles up. Better performance on the scorecard, because days in inventory does count, and so does days in eviction, okay? Less liability for the outsourcer or for the bank, because the longer that asset sits on the market and the longer it's exposed to the elements, and it can be damaged, and the property value could go down, they could miss their selling market. Like, there's a lot of liability. So faster progression through each stage, through eviction, pre-list, evaluation, all the way through. Better value and a higher return on the sale. And I put that just because you're actually getting the property vacated. If you get it vacated via cash for keys, that means the only way the occupant can get their cash for keys money is the property has to be left in broom swept condition, and it has to be in the condition that you saw it when you made the cash for keys offer. So that means the property's not being damaged. They're not going through and being upset and then tearing out the carpet or tearing down the cabinets, which I've seen everything. I've seen drywall torn off before we go in. So it's just a better value, higher return on that sale. Plus, if you have a property to market so that you can fill your pipeline, like that's one area that I think a lot of people are not leveraging enough. And that's why I love Josh's training, is because you have to remember that sorry, I don't think I moved these slides. I have to move those. But if you look at this, guys, you want a property to market. Like every property is your storefront, right? If it's a rundown property, that's fine, because now I'm going to build my investor network by people who have made sign calls, and I can now take that property and I can promote it on Facebook and social media, and I can send it to my investor network, and I can send it to everybody that I know. and I can build business for this. And if I don't get somebody who buys that property, no problem, because I'm building up all my contacts. Does that make sense? And I think I did have this. If anybody is working with Home Partners, I don't know if you guys know Home Partners, but if anybody is working with Home Partners as a registered agent, if somebody's being evicted, well, Home Partners has less restrictions with the foreclosure process. In fact, I don't think they have any foreclosure. I know that bankruptcy just has to be non-active or like discharged. So if you're helping somebody, you weren't able to get the short sale sold, that's fine. Now you got to transition this occupant from their house, but they don't want to go to an apartment. And if you want to save a little face and make it look like they're just transferring to a new home, Home Partners will actually come in, buy their home for them, and let them rent it back. And then they have up to 3 to 5 years to finance the property in their own name. Well, you get the commission when you sell it. So you could get the commission there, and you can help on the listing side too, okay? That's why I put this in here for Home Partners. I don't think everybody knows about them. It's a great tool when you're trying to transition somebody from a home that cannot qualify for the home right now, but they want to be able to buy in the next 3 to 5 years, okay? If you want more information on that, it's Home Partners is a website.
Well, to add to that, Ben, I mean, not just the homeowner that's being foreclosed on that needs to get evicted. And I don't know if you know like of a percentage, but and I know, it may differ area to area, but man, over the years I've had so many. I go knock on the door, deliver the eviction letter notice, and it's a tenant that's inside there that had no clue. They were still paying rent the whole time, had no clue, and they're like I'm the bearer of the bad news at them, and they're their kids have to be out. This is such a huge solution. Right? Because Home Partners could buy that house, keep renting back to them with the lease purchase, or you can go find them something different.
Actually, that's really cool. I had never even thought about that. Yeah, for the tenants, 100%, because Home Partners will buy the property if they're renting it and turn around and rent it back to them. You're right. We didn't have statistics on. Well, I guess we did have it. Yeah, it was about 35% was renter occupied. Yep. On the foreclosed side of it. And you're 100% right. I would say 90% of them had no idea it was coming. And when you knock on the door, the worst thing to hear is, what are you talking about? I've been paying rent. And they've been paying rent for months, and the owner just took it. We actually had some agents. I don't know if you ever had this in your area, but I know I had some agents in, I want to say it was Washington, that had done this, where they were actually running ads, and maybe it wasn't, I'm not going to say it was an agent, but somebody. No, it was an agent. They were running ads on a property that was a foreclosed property, and they were running ads to rent it. And they were collecting multiple deposits from people. Give me $500 to secure it. That'll take your spot. And then these people would go in, they'd go to the property and either couldn't get into it and they just lost all their money, or they were actually renting it to people, taking first and last month's rent, disappearing. And then we'd come knock on the door saying, why are you here? You're a squatter. Yep. Yeah, it was horrible. So with this Home Partners, this is the one thing that my wife does a ton of business with Home Partners. And it was the first time when she started really crushing it with it. That's when I realized, I was like, wait a minute, I didn't think about it from the rent that they can keep buying, they can buy the house that they're in. I didn't think about that. They can keep renting it. I had looked at it as, in our training, we talk about one of the best advantages when you're trying to increase your eviction success rate is you want to have connections with property management companies that understand someone has just gone through a foreclosure, or like you said, they were renting a property that is now being foreclosed on, so they're not getting that deposit back. So we need people who can understand that and transition them in. And then as I was thinking, I was like, well, if they qualify for Home Partners, then they could just buy another house and transition to it. So yeah, I had completely forgot. That's a great strategy there. So with the Home Partners information, that's where I love what Kim's been doing with it. She crushed it. I know in the last 12 months, she did 10 million. It was like 10.2 million just from Home Partners sales. This year, she's on track to do 20 million this year. So it's a good avenue. It's a great avenue for when you're doing this REO, because it gives tenants options if they can't purchase right now. And that's what you want to do, is be able to give people options. Okay. So this kind of goes back to this concept of that outsourcer. Like when we're trying to get in with an outsourcer, there's not one avenue to come into it, but also with a short sale, there's not one avenue out of it, right? We have open houses that we can run. We can circle prospect, we can mailer, we can sign call, we can do social media. The purple guy there probably should have been green, but it's just saying that there's ways to make money on the short sale all the way through the process, like long-term effects for it, right? We know that the power of listing is that we can just generate business, and we keep generating business. So, Okay, so I want to stop there. I just want to ask you guys a question really quick and just say we've reviewed 4 strategies that will actually blow up your business to get REO listings. And I just want to check in, just make sure it's been valuable for everybody. I know I can talk on tangents. I always try to follow my script, but then once I get going, it kind of leads one thought to another. So I just want to make sure this has been valuable for you guys. And I want you really just to see that one of these strategies, if you implement one of these strategies effectively, you're going to get your foot in the door and you're going to reap long-term rewards from that relationship. Okay, just from one of these. But now I'm going to give you my favorite one. So this is the one that I like just because I think it's pretty simple, but it gets a ton of recognition in the office, and that's really just gifts and goodies. Okay, so this is it's literally like bribing people in, but you want to send treats. So I'm going to give you an example on this. There was a time, I don't know if you guys have seen Office Space. I love Office Space, fantastic movie. But I remember as an ops manager for VA, one day I got this big old box of cookies, and they were like really high grade sugar cookies, which are my favorite. And they were all individually packaged. I mean, they were really just like this guy here, but they were all these sugar cookies that were beautiful, and there were probably like 100 of them. And this big box came and it sat down on my desk, and it just was from this agent. And it was just like, hey, hope you guys are doing well. Have one of these. And they had some kind of like really cheesy line with it. I don't remember what it was because this was so long ago, but it was like super cheesy, but it said basically have a snack on me. And the beautiful thing was they only gave me their card. And so I had these cookies and I was like, okay, I'm going to take these to my team first. So I walked around the office and I started giving all these cookies to my asset managers. And then I went to the other operations managers and I gave it to them. And I went to the VP and I gave it to them. And then I still had all these cookies left over. So then I started walking through accounting because I always want accounting to be on our side and I want closing to be on our side. So then I took the rest of these cookies and I went to closing. Still had cookies afterwards. So then I went to vendor management. I went to valuations. I went to other departments. I got rid of all these cookies. And then after I sat down, I thought, how brilliant of these guys. I put this picture in because I thought, well, that's really me walking these cookies around here. I went to every department and introduced this agent to every asset manager, ops manager, accounting, every single person. Like, who are these from? Like, oh, it's so-and-so in this place. Oh, it's so-and-so in this place. So these people went in and started looking them up to call them and thank them. And then this agent actually came into the network and started getting business from us. So definitely do that. Back in the day, agents would actually send gift cards. Josh, I don't know if you ever did that, but I remember the first time I got a $100 gift card to Best Buy and I was like, oh, this is awesome. I went out and bought something and then got in huge trouble with HR because it wasn't supposed to come to me. They were like it was supposed to go through the mailroom. They were supposed to stop it from coming to me, but I thought it was cool. I got this $100 gift card. There is a gatekeeper, and a lot of what most people don't realize is when you're sending things like that, like here's a gift card, here's a treat, here's tickets to this thing. Most of them are being confiscated and then they're being raffled at company events. Okay. They're being used for like the Christmas thing. Like, hey, we're giving out Starbucks gift cards. And these are all Starbucks gift cards. There are big limits that came from agents sending them in. Sending the treats is not going to do that because it's a perishable item. So they're going to deliver that. And then if you're also sending swag like this, that's going to go directly to the asset manager. So sending calendars, sending keychains, sending lip balm, sending desk pad, mouse pads, anything that you can that's getting your name out there, they're going to love it. If you walk through any asset manager shop, any outsourcer or like REO outsourcer, you're going to see agent calendars on every single one of their cubicles, right? Like it's just a fantastic way to brand. Okay, how do I know who to send the treats and the swag to? It's a great question. I went in and popped this in. I said, look, I'm just going to go in and say vendor resource management. I went into LinkedIn. Like, again, we'd go back to the Google search and all that stuff. But I just went in and I said, look, I want to send them to VRM. Boom. I popped this in. Now, this is going to pull up people in my network. But as I scroll down a little, there are other people that weren't in my network. But I would know, look, I've got them right here. I can send it to Denise Daniel. She's an operation manager at VRM. Boom. That's what I want to send it to. So I'm going to say, attention, Denise Daniel. There you go. Here's all the stuff going out to you. Now, if I don't want to send it to Denise, I could go somewhere else. Like maybe I want to send it to Sharon directly. That's fine. I could send it to Cliff. He's in charge of building their whole IT stuff. Charlie's somebody I actually worked with, and he is somebody that he'll call you up afterwards and he'll talk to you forever and say, thanks so much. And boom, you have an immediate in because Charlie's like the most personal guy I've ever met in my entire life. So it's a fantastic way to get in just by leveraging LinkedIn and then sending these things where you're just saying, hey, I know your job's stressful. Have this little treat from me, okay? How often would I send these? I would do it every 30 days, really. I would just just put it on your calendar, maybe make it refresh like the first Tuesday of every month. You're going to order them and send them over. Do edible arrangements, cookies, little treats. Even it can just be a little small something, just saying, how you doing? All that good stuff, okay? And then I put this as an FAQ. I was trying to answer all the frequently asked questions throughout this webinar, and that was just based off stuff that Josh has shared with me. Other people in the industry have shared with me. Also, some of the concerns that I've heard from other ops managers and asset managers when they're talking about agents submitting and trying to get into their networks. And so I was trying to cover all those, but this is the biggest one I get. How do I get a list of asset managers? And I'm going to give you an industry secret here. That's exactly how. You've got to cut this dude's arm off and break into this briefcase, and then you can get it. Like, it's a very highly secret process for some reason, but I think the reason is that people just move a lot. Like, I know at VRM, we never created a training manual that we rolled out specifically for our system, VRMS, because it was changing so much, and they didn't want to put all the time into putting this out there, and it just keeps changing. So there are ways to get internal lists, but as far as like a one-stop shop, it really doesn't exist because so many things are changing. So here's what I would do. First off, we showed that you can go to LinkedIn. I would go to LinkedIn and start building your contacts there. If I'm going after Sharon, so Sharon was on my team, and just to show you how much the industry changes, when I was an asset manager for Chase/EMC before it just became all Chase, Sharon was at Chase EMC and she was my boss. So she was the asset manager that I had to report to for Chase when I was an asset manager. And then I went to Dallas for VRM and I was her boss, and she was an asset manager and I was the operations manager. So it's this very connected world as you start going through. But if I want to get a list, I could go right here and I can find Sharon, I can add her, and I can look through and I can just see who are all the asset managers in LinkedIn. And I want to connect with them. I want to send them a nice little note that says, thanks so much for adding me to your network. I want to find them on Facebook. I want to get referrals, but that's where I'd start. But you really want to start kind of creating your own list. Okay. So you guys saw how I keep track of the companies because we're looking at submissions and we're looking at all that stuff constantly. I keep track of that primarily because all my connections tend to be asset managers and people in REO. But if I was just starting out and I was building that, I would start creating an Excel spreadsheet. So if I know that AZ is no longer working with this outsourcer, well, I guess AZ is an agent. But if I know that like Nate is no longer with VRM and he's moved over and he is now with Clayton or he's with Phoenix or somebody, then I can update my sheet just like I would if I have a buyer or a seller who has moved or has had kids or went to a certain college, something like that, where I'm trying to keep information. Doesn't have to be Excel. It could. That's super simple. But I'm just saying create your own list somehow and just keep updating it as you meet people, as you get assignments, as they move. Create your own list as you go. So that is that's really my suggestion to get into REO. Those are some strategies that I know they've worked for people. They'll work for you if you're diligent and just consistent with putting them in there. And then just make it happen. Remember, it's not going to happen overnight, but it is going to happen if you just keep working and moving forward towards it. Okay. So that is, that's my whole portion of this thing. I'm going to pass it back to Josh, and appreciate you guys, your time and attention on that.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Ben. That was absolutely amazing, dude. I mean, so many gold nuggets in there, and something that you said that I just want to reiterate on. And you guys, I've got training's not over yet. I've got a few things left that I want to cover. Then we're going to show you how to get this slide deck, get the free book, and then I've got a couple questions that did come in that I want to ask Ben on and for us to talk on as well. But as Ben mentioned, you guys, this is something just like any other strategy I'm going to start doing. Like, for example, I do a lot of Facebook ads for traditional business in my real estate business. And I'm a huge believer in tracking. The path is in the math. Well, inside our CRM, the average Facebook lead that we get as a client, it's 6.7 months before they want to start working with us. That means before we get let's just say it's a buyer, before we get a buyer broker agreement signed and get them pre-qualified. That's not meaning 6.7 months before they close, right? So this stuff can take time. When I'm working open houses, I'm going to commit to doing open houses for me to know any strategy that I'm going after, because I know it takes this to have results. First I'll vet it, make sure I have the right strategy in place. Then I'm going to give everything 6 to 9 months of an intense, focus and fair shake before I begin to judge it, right? Just like if you're going to go after expireds, start doing direct mail in a geographical farm area, all of this stuff, man, it's that consistency is so important. That's the only magic pill that exists out there. So, Ben just shared so many great strategies of us to be consistent on. And it doesn't mean that you have to do all of them, right? Any one of them you can have success with, but the more that you add, the better. And going back to the diversity thing, and I know Ben did a great job of letting you guys know that that's not something that you have to have. It's something that is looked highly upon with a lot of the banks and REO asset management companies and vendors. But look, guys, like I couldn't check any of those boxes. I got in over the years to just over 35 banks, asset management companies, and that's the other key too. I want to say is, at any given time, and when I say any given time, during the market crash, we don't carry this kind of volume with these, as I mentioned before, but during the peak, we were carrying anywhere between 3 to 350 REO assets at any given time. Now that would be including what's in eviction, what's in pre-market, what's listed, what's active listed, what's pending, and so forth. Right. But that wasn't from one company. That was a combination of many. Just like I'm not going to expect to, have a huge year by just closing one client. Right? Like we want to have multiple that are feeding us. And also, there was a time where, like Fannie Mae is an example, before they put in a cap, Fannie Mae, I mean, there was times where we'd get 70, 80, 90 properties in a month from Fannie Mae direct.
Yeah.
Well, then overnight, one day, they're like, oh, no, we got to spread the wealth. We're going to put in a cap. Each agent can only have 25 total properties, right? Well, if all my business was just reliant on Fannie Mae and I didn't have the other bank owns, plus the short sale, plus my traditional business, I would have been fucked, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like you always want to keep adding and get the process down. So it becomes really important. The other thing I want to hit on is something that is extremely important, because Ben covered how to get into REO. How do you get your assignment? But I want you to picture this. Like imagine you go get a listing. You go on a traditional listing appointment, you get the listing. Then you ask the seller, okay, what do I do to get your home sold? Right? They're going to probably retract that listing contract, freak out, want to fire you as possible. Right? So, Ben is an asset manager. Let's just say Ben and we didn't have the pleasure of working together during the REO days. But if Ben was one of my asset managers, Ben's given me the properties. He's done his job there, right? Or reciprocate or whatever with that. It's my responsibility and job to know exactly then what to do through all of the processes. And one of the most frustrating things about REO is there's zero training, right? From on the asset management side. I had to figure all this stuff out. It was like, all right, you got a property. Well, now you got to go do an eviction. Well, what the hell is an eviction? I'm scrambling because I had 24 hours to do my eviction occupancy check. And I had to figure out, okay, what are the eviction laws in Arizona? What can I do? What can I can't do? Right? What's this cash for keys thing? What is all of this? Right. And what is a BPO? How do I do it? It's a mini appraisal. How do I do it? What do they want to see? Right. It's up to you to already know how to do this stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's really why we've created the advanced training that we have created. Cause it's like, you got to know occupancy check, cash for keys, evictions, BPOs, trash outs, repair and marketing strategy. The bank is expecting you to be the expert on, hey, should we sell this as is? Or if we put money into carpet, paint, appliances, whatever, it's kind of like playing, like working with investor clients flipping houses that needs your guidance. You got to do your monthly market reports, your weekly inspections, utilities, the billing, right? That's your responsibility to do all of that. And of course, in addition to that, hitting your asset management goals, aged assets, and then from there, leveraging the REO business. Now, Ben talked about this when it comes to short sales. The same thing is true for REO, right? Like you guys, and this is true for your traditional business as well. But when you get a listing, you want to leverage that listing so you can turn it from one sale into 3 or 4 sales through open houses, through social media marketing, through, right? There's strategic ways to go out there and build this up. So let's just say you are getting 30 REOs a year. Maybe you get a small account and you're only getting 30 a year, from which I think all of us would love an extra 30 closings a year. And that's not hard to do, especially in REO, because you become a victim of your own success. You go from kind of like, closing half a dozen to now all of a sudden getting a half dozen dumped in your lap at a time.
Because once you're in that network, everybody wants to reassign to you. Like that's the key. I don't think I even mentioned that. You probably got that a bunch where someone called you and was like, hey, I need you to save this. This agent's not doing their job. It's coming to you. I need it sold.
Yeah, because I tell you
And it
guys,
just jumps.
all sales at the end of the day, you guys, is pain and pleasure.
Yeah.
Identifying what pain the consumer has, right? And in this case, our client would be the asset manager. What are their pains, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we want to be the best guide to get them from the pain they're experiencing to the pleasure they want to experience. So once you prove yourself to be reliable, they can trust you, they can count on you, you're a true professional, boom, they want to start feeding you everything, because there's such a lack of that in the real estate agent space. Just like we all experience in the
100%.
traditional business with agents not answering their phones, right? Not hitting contract date, right? Timeline dates, not, like there's so much unprofessionalism that exists in our industry and all aspects of the industry. It's not like only the true professionals, land REO accounts, right? We experience the mass unprofessionalism there. And you got to be prepared for this, right? When you get an REO account, you immediately you're set up for failure. And again, there's zero training and to know what to do. I remember one time on Christmas Eve, I got 17 REO assignments on Christmas Eve. Well, banks, dude, and this was from Fannie Mae, they didn't delay tasks due because it was Christmas Eve. They don't take holidays into account. So we had 24 hours to do 17 property checks, right? Occupancy checks, offer cash for keys, all of that. And I had to call my whole team and like, hey guys, like, look, we're going to work through the night. I'll make sure everybody's home for Christmas morning so you can open presents with your kids, right? But what do you do in those situations, in those scenarios? And it's not their responsibility. Just like it's not your seller's responsibility to tell you how to list and sell their house. It's not you, a buyer's responsibility, once you sign a buyer broker agreement and get a pre-qualification, then like guide you through helping them as your realtor. That is your job. That is your responsibility, which is why we created this training. And we walk you through every element of it when it comes to REO as well as short sales. REO University, you guys, is 22 training modules showing you exactly what to do, how to do it step by step, a total complete paint by number system to ensure that you're extremely successful with this. So we'll just do a quick look of a breakdown with this. And then this will just take a few minutes, guys. I'm going to break down this real quick so you know what it is. And maybe you're not ready for this now. That's okay. Like, we're not going anywhere. We just want to make sure that you're aware of it. We're not here to try to sell you on this. Just make sure that you have awareness of this. So you know it's out there as a resource. And then we'll get into showing you how to get the book, get the slide deck, and then Ben do a little bit of some Q&A again with some more questions. So REO 101 is just understanding at a high level, understanding what the REO process is, how it works, the ins and outs. You've got to know the game that you're playing, right? You got to know the game that you're playing. Then you got to know the directions and instructions to play the game, right? Then we get into successful REO and short sale mindset. This is really important. I know mindset is one of these words that gets so just overused and kind of blown out of proportion, but you got to understand, you guys, because we're dealing with people that are going through hardships. You're dealing with evictions. You're dealing with all of this. I mean, I've had to impound people's cars, impound their pets, right? While their wife and kids, is in the room going through that. So you gotta be prepared and know how to manage, have that empathy, that compassion, but your client's still relying on you to guide through this process. On short sales, same thing, man. These people are losing their home, their memories. There's a pride element that's hit really hard. You need to know how to manage that. And if you're not careful, it can destroy the culture inside your organization. Plus, you guys got to understand that whether it's a negotiator on the short sale side, which is a lot of what Ben's wife, Kim, before they got into real estate did. She always jokes
the fight.
She always jokes and says, I was trying to save the homes while Ben was taking the homes. Right?
Tell her to knock it off. We needed the assets to sell. Yeah.
Yep. But, you're dealing with people that are going through that tough time. That's really important to know how to manage that, but manage it in an effective way where you can keep your business moving forward. But then you got to also understand the stress that the asset managers and these negotiators are on. Right? So sometimes an asset manager, you get treated like a human punching bag at times, and you can't take it personal because Ben might have just got ripped by his boss on things that are no control, right? We can't always control. If the bank comes back outside of Ben's recommendation and my recommendation to list that property 30, 40 grand high, and we can't get it sold, and now he's getting his ass ripped, right? Well, that pressure trickles down, right? So you got to know how to manage this stuff mentally. Then we're talking about time management, because REO and short sales is a total different breed than traditional real estate. REO is very simple to property management. You know, and short sales ends up being there's a tremendous amount of time with you working with the bank negotiators, and you got to be able to manage that because you still have appointments, you still obviously have family time, and building a traditional business. So you need to get very structured with your schedule so you can pull all of this stuff off. It becomes really important. Then talking about a lot about what we did, what Ben talked about today of getting into REO, plus we go through, you know, in depth and more strategies of how to make sure that you get in, how to do the application. You guys are going to see here in a minute. We also have a Facebook group where you have access to Ben. Like Ben reviews people's resumes that are getting in, and the private Facebook group is so huge. One of the ways that I got more REO accounts than anything else was my relationships with other REO agents, right? Because if I'm here in Phoenix, Arizona, and Ben is in Salt Lake City, and I just get in with Fannie Mae Direct, I can be like, hey, Ben, here's all the contacts I have. He's not in my backyard. It's not going to pull away from my business, you know, right? 100%. So those networking groups become huge. So then we talk about realtor financials. Really important, you guys. You need to understand more so than an REO than short sales. Short sales, you're not going to have a lot of money to other than your normal marketing costs like you would for any traditional business. But REO is a different breed. Now, back in the day, now it's changed, thank God. But back in the day when I first got into REO, I had to fund all the cash for keys. If they wanted to replace carpet, paint, I had to fund all of that stuff, and then be reimbursed from the bank maybe in 6 months. So maybe within my first, maybe, you know, I mean, some are quicker, some are longer, you know, right? But that's what I plan and prep for. I mean, within my first 6 months, I got to the point where I was $250,000 out in what's called receivables, AKA money that you're lending to the banks, you know, and that's changed now. You know, right? But we break down what to be prepared for, you know, because you're still going to have to put utilities in your name. You got to make sure that they're done right. They're turned in time. And sometimes you have to get that utility, that final utility bill to the bank or to whoever your outsourcer is before that utility bill can make it to you. What do you do in those times? You know, right? Sometimes that might require like you running down to the local water office or whatever it is to make sure, because you got to get paid back on that money because it can bankrupt you if you don't. So realtor financials on that is really huge. And we show you how to budget and how to do it. Even if you don't have any money, if you don't have a lot of money in the bank right now, we show you of other ways to access money, to leverage that, and agreements that you can have with your vendors and things like that. Walk you through the eviction process step by step, because there's multiple different types of evictions. You know, you've got your cash for keys, but then you have, you know, there's other types of evictions that is going to take place. Like I said, you've got cash for keys.
Personal property eviction.
That's kind of the back end of the eviction, where they've agreed to take a check to move out on a given time, move their stuff out, and so forth. And that's one of the questions that I have that I'm going to go into with Ben after in just a moment, of having him explain cash for keys a little bit more in depth. But then, okay, if somebody's moved out and there's personal property there, well, you may have to do a personal property eviction. And the bank is leaving that up to you. Well, hey, man, if this property and there's valued over X amount of dollars, you know, right? Then they have to give time to do a personal property eviction. Well, how do you property value like that? You know, how do you value a couch that's used? How do you all of those stuff? Then when the eviction process is over, you got the personal property demo, right? You got to remove all that. And what's cool about this training, you guys, I know you're just seeing like the module kind of images, but Ben is going live into houses. He's showing you all of this stuff live, you know, right? So when we talk about the trash out demolitions, like he's showing you a live trash out that he's going through and doing in his market. Understanding the KPIs that Ben talked a lot about, key performance indicators, there's important indicators that you need to pay attention to in your business, but also that you need to understand that the bank's paying attention to, because we want to make our asset managers win. Because the more that we make them win, the more that we make them look good, the more that they're hitting their goals, right? Like we're becoming the heroes. And guess what? When you're a hero to a client, what happens? Not just more business from them, but also referrals.
They'll rave. Yeah.
Talk in the office.
And the one thing I think I'd forgotten with this is that one of the keys to success my whole career was I was able to, when they first started coming out with scorecards, because asset companies are like the outsourcers are judged too. I built a whole Excel formula that models the KPIs that outsourcers are judged on. So you can put your own production results into them and then see exactly how you stack up against your scorecard, which nobody will ever release to you. These outsourcers are never going to release that info. So we just built it.
Yep. Love it, man. So then BPOs, as Ben mentioned, broker price opinion. So Ben's walking you through exactly how to do BPO. He's doing live BPOs with you. showing you again what the asset manager wants to see. And yeah, I know how to do a BPO, but I never knew because I never had the training from the asset manager. My asset managers never sat me down like, okay, here's what I need to see. Here's a clean BPO. They get rejected sometimes. You're just like, well, why is this getting rejected? Like, I didn't know, right? We just kind of had to do our best guesses. How list prices are set and how to dispute them, extremely important. This is one of the biggest things that you're graded on, right? So you've got to know that. And if you think it's out of line, you've got to be the professional that's walking and helping your asset manager through. REO repairs and marketing strategy. Again, you are the expert that your asset manager clients are going to rely on you to make those judgment calls. How do we know how this needs to be valued? Does it make sense to put in new carpet, new paint? Not just to make it look pretty, right? They need to get an ROI on their money, right? So what does that look like? We're talking about property management, not in a way that you're thinking of a property manager for rentals. We're talking about managing your portfolio, right? And it becomes extremely important there. On-site property inspections, marketing your REO and short sales, extremely important there. Again, of how to go out there, market them effectively, leverage your REOs and short sales. The REO offer process, it's a completely different beast than traditional offers that are coming in. What does that look like? There's going to be new additional and different contracts that are utilized. There's certain things and ways that these offers need to be organized specifically. Working with those asset managers, right? Because again, they're under high stress. They have a lot of expectations. Goals need to be hit. We're under a lot of stress, right? Like we're in this together though. We need to work successfully together with them because we all have a vested interest in each other's success. So systems and pipeline management. So different ways to help you manage your business more effectively. How to transition successfully from markets. How to know, hey, when is it time to really start scaling up my REO? When is it time to really start scaling up, going after hedge funds? When is it time to really start scaling up my traditional business and so forth? Because at any given time, if you do this right, you're going to have a certain percentage of your business that's each of these, right? But there are indicators where it's like, okay, hey, like I'm prepping to really scale these things up and how to pivot. Because as I said before, there's no such thing as a bad market. It's just identifying whom is the market good for and positioning and transitioning all your attention, energy, and efforts. And, I've been in the real estate industry now since 2005, and my business has grown each and every single year, regardless of the economic environment. Right? Whether it's a seller's market, buyer's market, extreme buyer's market with REO short sales, it hasn't mattered. And it's not because I'm special. It's not because I got lucky, right? It's just because I pay attention, right? I pay attention. I've had so many great mentors before me that have helped me and guided me. And we just know how to pivot and transition. And then, of course, as we talked about, we've got in-depth short sale prospecting, and not just short sale prospecting, but how do I go out there and work this short sale? Your listing presentation on a short sale is different. The marketing and things that you're sending to get short sales obviously is different, but also the offer process is much different on a short sale. You've got to prep the files a very specific exact way. You've got to follow up with your I don't want to say asset manager, but your negotiator on that side in a very specific way. If you guys do this, you can have a lot of success with them. My team sold thousands of REOs over the years. And in our market here in Phoenix, Arizona, we're still about 20% below peak pricing of 2005. So, we still see, decent, like I said, it's nothing like it was during the market crash, but any given month, we're doing about a half a dozen, right? So that's about 10% of our business where we're doing about 60 closings a month, right? So it's still, something that we're doing every day in our business now today. And then how to delegate and build out a successful short sell and REO team. And this is really important, you guys, because as we mentioned before, you quickly become a victim of your own success, right? So when I got those 17 foreclosures from Fannie Mae assigned to me on Christmas Eve, it'd be impossible to pull off on your own, right? Now, you don't need to build the team before you get the REO counts or before you start doing short sales, but very quickly, if you do this right, and as I said, you become a victim of your own success, you need to know quickly how to add the right people, when to add them, and build out your team. And it's much different than a traditional real estate team, right? It's more of the assembly line, somewhat of approach. You're going to be more admin heavy, less agent heavy per se than a traditional real estate team. It's almost the opposite of that. It's a whole different beast. So that's everything that's included in REO University in the actual training. To give you guys an example there, or give you an idea there. Plus, as I said, we have a secret private Facebook group where you have access to Ben and I to ask any questions. But then everybody that goes through the program is added in there well, so we can all network and mastermind on what's working, what's not working, what banks everybody's getting into right now. Get your resumes reviewed. If you have an issue with one of your BPOs, need some more questions, look, a lot of times when questions come up, it's during the execution component. So we want to make sure that you have that support in order to go out there and crush it with this. So REO University, guys, currently is selling for $1,497. However, we want to reward those of you who've been on this train now for a couple hours. You've been here with us. We know that you're committed, and we love rolling with those that are truly committed. So we want to reward you for that. So we're going to give you guys a huge discount, a huge promotion for just being here with us. We're going to knock $500 off that. So you get the whole entire REO University program for only $997. Or you can break it down to 3 payments. We're not charging any finance fees. We just break it down, divide over 3 payments to make it more affordable for everybody, because we all know any of us can figure out how to come up with $333 a month, right? So we wanted to make it super affordable. Plus you get, again, lifetime access, or as long as the program exists, which we're not going anywhere anytime soon until Ben and I were both young dudes in the real estate space until we retire, which I'm imagining 60 years from this time, right?
Yeah. Then we'll pass it down. We'll grandfather then.
Yeah, right? But with the Facebook group, you guys, right now, again, just to give you just to support you guys and reward you guys, there's no fee for this right now at this time for the Facebook group, which soon that will change. We'll be charging $50 a month in addition to the training. But right now you're grandfathered in. It's 100% free to you. So even when we start charging for the Facebook group, you're going to be grandfathered in. So right now, if this is something you want to jump into, you want to dive into it, and you want to start exploding your REO business, and adding that is another leg to your business to help you recession-proof your business, not just REO, but short sales as well. If you guys want to take advantage of this, you're going to see a link pop up, or a box pop up right now. You should see that on your screen where you can click on and get this special pricing. Now, this program is going to be available for any of you guys at any time. However, you're just not going to get the special pricing. You have to pay the full price for it, and you won't be guaranteed the Facebook group. You won't be grandfathered into the Facebook group. So if it's something that you want to take immediate action while we are on this training, so before we hang up on this train, if you take action on it right now, you save that $500, get that access to that Facebook group, get dialed in, and get that huge promo. And we're excited to roll with you guys, those of you that want to jump in. All right, so here's what you need to do. Make sure that you take action now before this special goes away. So step number 1, if you go to reomasteryuniversity.com. So open up a separate browser. You're going to see that box that will pop up as well, where you can click on that, and you can pull right there. But just in case you don't see it, you can go to reomasteryuniversity.com. More information about the program on there. You click this button right down here for a click here to buy now. Enter in the promo code REO University, all caps, all one word right here. And that is going to knock that $14.97 price down to $9.97. And like I said, you can select to do a single payment of $9.97 or 3 payments. We don't care, whichever one's best for you and works best for you. That is how you jump on into the program. But again, to get access to that program, or get access to the promo, you got to do it before we hang up here on this training. All right, as promised, we want to make sure that you guys get Ben's free book, as well as a copy of this slide deck. So in order to do that, here is the URL to go to. So reofreegifts.gsdmode.com. So and just screenshot it on your computer or with your phone, whatever, if you want to. But reofreegifts.gsdmode.com, and they'll see 2 buttons on there to download. You don't need to opt in for anything. You just click on them, boom. You'll see a PDF version of those right now, so you can check those out. So again, guys, take action while you're on the webinar. I'm going to leave this up as we just have been asked answer a few more questions here for us. We're going to leave this up. But again, make sure if you want to jump in, you want to change your life, change your business, recession-proof your business, take advantage of this huge promo, make sure to jump on into REO University. All right, so Ben, as I mentioned before, I saw a couple questions come in when you started talking about cash for keys. Can you go a little bit more in depth of like, what is cash for keys? What is the process? How is the value set? And just like what the expectation is from the asset manager side?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me okay still? These kind of just died. We're
Yep,
good
I
still?
can hear
Okay,
you perfectly.
perfect. So cash for keys. So like you said, I'd written that article on cash for keys, and really my argument was how aggressive cash for keys ends up saving outsourcers and banks in the long run. So basically the way the cash for keys is going to work is they any outsourcer has figured out that there's going to be standard eviction costs anywhere from $500 to $1,000 if the eviction is not contested. That's how much they're going to have for their attorneys just to process all the paperwork through. So what the outsourcers and the banks have done is they've said, hey, look, instead of spending that money and going through anywhere from 30 days to maybe 6 months, if we just give the tenants or the occupants a check to voluntarily vacate the property and leave it in broom swept condition, meaning it's free of all their personal items, so you don't have to do a personal property eviction afterwards. You don't have to do a post and store. It doesn't mean it's deep cleaned. It just means it's broom swept, right? So it can have some debris there, but for the most part, the property is left in good condition. They're going to get a check. The occupant's going to get a check in exchange for vacating the property. And then it's typically tied to a time frame. So I know with Fannie Mae, with their direct, they have a standard form based on where you're at in the country. So it may be $2,800 in this market, it may be $3,800 in this market. And then it's almost like this scale where that's for a 2-week vacate, I think, 2 or 10-week vacate. And then it's going to start sliding down. So instead of 38, now it's 28. And as that timeline, the longer that the occupant stays in the property, the more that offer comes down. So if you get to the point where the eviction's tomorrow, they're just going to say, no, I'm not doing cash for keys anymore because you dragged this out too long. But the idea behind it is to incentivize someone to leave the property. And I think from a moral standpoint, it gives them a little bit of money because most likely, like you said, this is what I think about for tenants for sure. They're not getting that deposit back. Like the deposit's gone. If they're foreclosed, the landlord has taken the money, they're gone. So it's a way to give them a little bit of money to have a fresh start and to be able, it's usually, the way I always looked at it was, it seemed like the values seemed to coincide with the typical rent in the area, and then it was like a first and last month's deposit. So if you're at a $3,800, your typical rent is probably $1,900. So it was like first and last months to get in. VA does it different. So VA is the only one that escalates up. So VA says go out and offer 5,000. I think it starts at $2,500 for them to vacate in 2 weeks, and if that's rejected, VA comes back with another offer and says offer them $5,000 to be out in 2 weeks. And if that's rejected, VA comes back and says offer them $10,000 to vacate in 2 weeks. If that's rejected, then VA goes through with the foreclosure. So VA takes an opposite approach. They take it as a negotiation saying, hey, I want to make this a good transition for you. I don't want to go through the eviction. And I think they want to save a lot of face too, because no banks want to be on the news for doing a trash out. And Josh, you know, from being at trash outs, they're not good for anybody. I mean, you're taking someone's personal property and you are literally taking it to the curb with the sheriff there. That's not good for the occupants. It's not good for the neighborhood. It's not good for the outsourcer or the bank, especially if a news crew is out there as someone's just taken beds and furniture directly to the curb. So Cash for Keys was built to mitigate that situation, but then also mitigate the time that you're in eviction, damage to the property, and to pay to vacate it faster. Did I hit enough on there?
Yep, love
Okay.
it. And then I got another follow-up question to that that I just noticed of how many of cash for keys are like, what's the success rate versus the eviction? And I'll kind of go with this first of my experience, you know, being the dude, like, again, we were the opposite ends of, you know, the business during the Great Recession. But out of all the, you know, the 1,200 plus foreclosures I've done over the years, you guys, I've had 3 that went where they wouldn't accept the cash for keys. They wouldn't listen to us. They just kept burying their head in the sand. Well, we had to do a full-on sheriff, you know, attended full-on eviction, and that's, you know, going in. And it's a little scary, you know. I mean, you're safe. The sheriffs make sure you're safe, but their guns are drawn, you know, right? And going to the property, right? And now every state can be different, but here in Arizona, in all the 3 cases that I had, we had moving companies there. We would take their belongings, put those in a storage unit, and then they had so much time to come get their stuff out of the storage unit. But in order to get their stuff, they had to pay the attorney fees and the storage unit fee costs. So it makes most sense for them just to get the hell out. I had one instance where I had to, where I was talking about impounding cars. Also, I had to impound a dog and a turtle. Like, I'm not sure what you're, yeah, you got to get a little creative sometimes. But
Man.
most people are good at, like,
Mhm.
they get what's up, and and then again, this is the importance, guys, of having the right mindset, knowing how to empathetically handle these situations. And because dude,
Yeah.
their ego's been hit hard. They're plus they're losing these memories, and nobody wants to lose their home, man. I mean, you could just
No.
put yourself in that situation. I think that's really important, you guys, is just to, as tough as it is, man, put yourself in other people's shoes as much as you possibly can, and just show empathy and compassion. And if you do that right, you know um uh you're going to have a lot of success with these. And because here in Arizona with Cash for Keys, and now with my banks, I never was with VA, but it was 2 weeks, $2,050. Yeah, right.
Mhm.
Like, no negotiation, at least on the amount. Right. If they needed more, as you said, it would go residually down. But just knowing how to handle that process, speaking to them just like they're humans. I always look at all real estate, whether it's REO, short sales, traditional business, leads I'm trying to generate. But it's, look, these are human beings. They're not leads. They're not
Mhm.
people we're evicting. I don't look at them that way. I'm looking at them as, man, this is somebody's mom, dad, daughter, son, somebody's grandmother. How would you want your grandmother to be treated? How would you, like, you got to really show that empathy, and it's so important. But with your experience, because I know you did over 2,000 Cash for Keys leading that department, because I know that there's some fear of agents thinking, oh man, with the eviction process, and I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to bring up because it's funny, it happened in Arizona too. Like one of the worst evictions we actually ran into was with a veteran who had posted up in his tree with a shotgun and I think like some kind of assault rifle, and he was actually shooting at the sheriffs as we were there. So that was the worst one that we had. But I'm going to mirror exactly what you said, but my numbers are a little diluted in the fact that now this also leads into why training is so necessary. The majority of agents doing REO are not like you, and they did not go do their occupancy inspections quickly. So we found that our eviction percentage was only about 6%. But where the numbers got diluted is that we had so many properties that were, I want to say we were about 45% of properties that voluntarily vacated. And when we would dive in, what we found out is that to complete the task quickly, the agents would just go mark that it's occupied because it's the safest protection. So they want to complete their task quickly, they hit occupied, and then they bought themselves time to go out. Well, now when they actually go out and inspect the property, they come back and they can update it and say, hey, I just checked and the property's vacant. We're like, how are we getting all these voluntary vacant properties if we haven't done the Cash for Keys or anything like that? And we found out that the people had moved because there's two different mindsets. If somebody's not going to sit there and fight it, and that's your 6% that are going to go to eviction, if someone is not going to sit there and fight it, most likely they're going to be out before the foreclosure actually happens. They're going to start making plans. I've seen people deep clean the house and leave it completely spotless and leave notes saying, I'm sorry this happened. Please take care of this property. Especially with VA, because you can actually, if you're evicting in the VA, you can actually go to their commanding officer and say these people are vacating a property illegally, and their commanding officer will actually go talk to them to vacate. So we saw a lot of people incorrectly putting a voluntary vacate. Our Cash for Keys success rate. So it was interesting when I managed the eviction department, we could see it in multiple trends. So like you'd said, Fannie is just, it is what it is. Either take it or don't take it. VA is a sliding scale up. And then when we did it for Bank United, they said we have way too many properties. And Bank United was mainly in Florida, but they said we have way too many properties. We need to get these suckers out of eviction. What do we do? And we said, okay, well, let's try this experiment. And we're going to do a sliding scale based on negotiation. So in our department, we actually created, instead of having an eviction coordinator, I created a group of Cash for Keys coordinators. And their job specifically, Mike Ludi, who I showed you, was an asset manager from LinkedIn. I hired him in California. He was a referral. I brought him out to be one of the first Cash for Keys coordinators. And their whole comp structure was based on their Cash for Keys success rate. So their job was to go out and successfully negotiate, because if you went out, like with Fannie, there's not much you can do because of the cap they have, but we still want to know how much they'll take out. And so it was the job of the Cash for Keys coordinator to work with the agent to find out what it would take them to get out. And so if someone's like, yeah, give me 10 grand and I'll get out, if that's not realistic, they say, well, do you really need 10 grand or do you need less? Like, I know that I can get you into this apartment and it's $99 to get in for the first month, and then it's $1,000 deposit and then your utilities. So for $2,500 I can get you moved over. They would come back to us with that number, and then we would take it to the outsourcer. I mean, we'd take it to the bank or the servicer and we'd say, hey, they rejected your 2050, but they said for 3,000 they'll get out. Will you do that? So we had a couple where they would work with us like that. Bank United was the first one that ran full out, and they said, just bring us back a number. So they had a hard and fast number, and then they said, just bring us back a number. And we found that the number tended to be right around $5,000. So then we experimented and we said, let's just run out with 5,000 cash for keys. And we were at like a 96, 97% successful rate with the cash for keys. But I've escalated and I've had them write $15,000 checks in areas where that eviction is going to take 2 years. They've written a check for.
Get them out to stop that. So, okay, I'm on default microphone.
Yep. No, I just heard it switch over. All right. So next question for you, dude. How do you know what banks and asset managers are in your area?
The number one way that I would do it is, again, you're going to start building your list, but you're going to look at you're going to work with your title and look at the tax records and look at the title work to see who's taken over that. I would do that. I know that I've also seen, you can look at recordings from right after this. So you could actually go to some foreclosure sales and see who's doing it, but you can go to the court, you can go to the recorder's office too. And I've seen people get really sloppy and leave HUDs, and that shows you who's on there, recording information. But primarily I go to my MLS a lot. That's where I like to go, and I can pull it up and I can usually see who owns it, because they're going to include, this seller specific documents in the MLS, because so many different banks are using a specific contract. So for VA, we used a 2-page contract. So we uploaded that with every MLS listing. And then you have very specific way about the name, how the name needs to be read as the seller. So that information should be on the MLS. Otherwise, I would go to look at the tax records at the recorder's office, or to get information from the courthouse. So I would notice I have the NOD list that my title company sends me, and we start working those to see who that owner is.
Yeah, love it, dude. Awesome stuff, man. All right, so one last question here for you. I know we're going long on time, and I appreciate you sticking through this with us. So how much money should we set aside per REO, just to be prepared? I know we talked about financials when we were explaining the program.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I know back when you started, we had an internal, and it wasn't an official policy, but what we looked for when approving a vendor was we wanted to see access to $2,500 per asset that we were going to sign out. So if you wanted 10, we had to see the ability to float $25,000. That didn't have to come from a bank account. It could be credit cards. It could be a home equity line. We just wanted to see that, because we were looking at, you're managing those utilities on an ongoing basis. And like you said, sometimes it takes 6 months to get reimbursed, especially if you're submitting reimbursements incorrectly without the right approval, and you've got to escalate it. So we're saying you're not going to need it on every single one of them, but about 20% of the portfolio is going to go through eviction. So we had to account for that cash for keys. And then the goal, the strategy, it's changed recently. So now you see more outsourcers like Freddie wants to repair a higher number. I've seen some outsourcers or banks that want to repair like 50% of their assets. Back in the day, you would have had to cover that. So that's what they would do, is they say, what is our client's goal for repair strategy? If it's 10% and they want the average repair to be at least, $5,000. So that's how they would start looking at those. And that's where that $2,500 to $3,500 per asset came into play. Right now, I would say you're probably $1,000 to $1,500 to be comfortable, because where the reimbursement process can take some time, we don't want anybody out there missing a mortgage payment because they're floating money. So I would say $1,000, $1,500, I would say $1,000 minimum per asset.
Yep.
15. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I think 1,000 is a good safe number at a minimum. I think going to 2,000 may be excessive. I mean, because the banks have, and across the board, right? Not just with some banks, but great at doing cash for keys, great at having their vendors now doing. I used to have to pay my own vendors for trash outs. Now most of them have their own vendors or will pay direct to those. So for the most part, it's utilities. But then I always want to prepare agents for, like, look, you guys, and this is something I've always been huge on, because we go on these tours, like with the asset manager will fly out sometimes to come see their properties, and where everybody in the group, like, you visit one of their homes, but you're like as a group. And I think we've all seen it on the, like with our buyer side too, seeing some of these REOs are just so neglected. And to me, it's a shame, right? However, It's a way, like, you got to capitalize in business. And I know this might sound ruthless, might sound cutthroat, however you want to frame it. But in business, you guys, like, there isn't a win-win, right? Like, either you're getting, if you go on a listing appointment against one other agent, either you're getting it and winning or you're losing, right? So I would capitalize on that, man. And I would see how these other agents were treating these asset managers' properties, and the asset managers know it, right? So I would make sure that my properties look so ungodly pristine. Right? So if that meant, though, because, dude, like, I don't want to bog down an asset manager of, oh, there's weeds here, your property preservation company isn't doing a good job. I would just go take care of the frickin' weeds. Now, first, because I didn't have the team and the pockets to invest into just having my landscaper run out there at my cost. I'm not asking for reimbursement on this stuff. I would go out and pick the friggin' weeds. I see my pool guy out. I go out the pool, right? The most expenses that we're taking on, though, is agents now is utilities. And then if there's like emergency board ups, if there's a break in or something and you got to do what you do to get the property safe and secure, outside of that. So if you were treating it like most REO agents, $500 would probably be fine, or $1,000 would be fine, right? But to do it in the right way, probably $1,500 to 2,000 max, where you can get a line of credit. You can do a cash advance on your credit card if needed, because this money's going to come back to you, right? Not that I recommend those ways, but I personally would do that if needed. I haven't had to in the past, but man, I want to make them look pristine. I'm paying the money to do professional photos on everything. Like, I'm making these look like pristine properties, even if the property's not so pristine, right? Like when I say I'm going to go do the landscaping if needed, like, that's pulling weeds, whatever. I'm not going to go put in trees for them, right? I'm going to make it look as good as I possibly can, right? But then from there, even if it's not the best looking property, I'm still marketing it at the highest possible level, right? Because it's going to show my asset manager I'm doing a great job for them. Plus, it's just going to maximize our success for them. Plus, what is beautiful to us, or what might not be beautiful to us, might be beautiful to somebody else, right? Like, what's his saying? One man's trash is another man's treasure,
exactly.
Right? Like, you just never know. So I always take this stuff very seriously. It's just, to me, it's like, hey, no different than if I had $1 million traditional seller. That's how I'm treating even a $100,000 REO. Right?
Well,
Same thing.
I think that's why you were so successful, though, because I know that one of the worst experiences I've had is I was actually with the trading desk in Las Vegas. We show up to a property and the entire pool is green and mosquitoes are flying everywhere. And, that's a huge violation. It's a huge hazard. And they made me, I think it was Bridget, she told me, get on the phone with whoever that is right now and fire them from everything, every single asset they had. She goes, I don't want them ever touching my asset again. And that's when 90% of the assets in Vegas were REOs. So this person lost a ton of business because that pool wasn't being maintained. And I was always on the opinion, because when you run, you're going to have challenges managing the prop pres vendors sometimes, because you may be assigned somebody that's not the best. But I agree with you. And my top agents would look at it saying, I'm going to do what's best for the asset, because this is a long-term investment for me. And like you said, if you're getting a good asset in a good neighborhood, I mean, if somebody came into you right now and they said, hey, Josh, I'm a brand new agent, what should I do? If you have a good looking vacant property, open house all day, every day, get the buyer. Start building up your buyer network around here. Go circle prospect around here. So you're building your business, but you're also preserving the value of the neighborhood. You're keeping the kids safe, because you're not doing something, especially in your area, where now you've got mosquitoes coming in and you've got these deadly viruses. Like, mosquitoes are the #1 most deadly predator on the planet because they carry so many diseases with them, right? You're also not having any hazards of a pool that's unsecure. And then you're not creating this animosity with the neighborhood where you're bringing the value of the property down because the weeds are growing up and because it looks abandoned, when for $20 you can get somebody out there to just at least just cut the thing down, right? That's the difference between a successful agent that realizes that getting one REO is like doing a great seller presentation and then giving you 30 to 300 listings every single year. That's the difference. So, but for people that may not have as much funds, but also have the hunger for it, we do show some strategies where you're saying, look, I can turn the utilities on, but I can trip the breaker. I can have the water in my name, but I can turn it off at the curb. These are things that I can do so that I don't fail property inspections, but I'm also not spending a lot of money monthly on utilities because I just turn the power off of the breaker. So I've complied, but I'm also making sure that I'm not spending a fortune on these things. maybe I don't need to service the pool. It's better to drain it and clean it. So now I'm not paying for that, the utilities and the upkeep of it. So there are ways to do it. And that's what we wanted to show people the smart way to spend the money, but account for it. Yeah. Because if you don't have money walking into it, it can be very painful if you can't do some of the things the asset managers do. Because I think even with utilities still, unless it's a large amount, I want to say if it's under $1,000, agents are paying those past due water bills and then being reimbursed unless it's a big amount. And you can request for the asset management company to cut a check directly, but you don't want to get in the habit of requesting them to pay for everything or they'll just move on. So we had set it at $2,500 back in the day when people were still doing cash for keys. And then internally, once we started stroking those checks, we moved it down to 15 was ours.
Yep. Awesome. Love it. Powerful stuff. And, Ben, just want to say thank you, man. A huge thank you to you.
Oh man.
Taking time out of your busy day to be here and drop all your brilliance, on us. And, those that are here with us, man, thank you so much for being here. We hope you got a ton of value out of this. We know how busy your time is. There's nothing worse than jumping on a training like this and having your time wasted.
Yes.
And our commitment is always any trainings that we do is to make sure that we don't do that to you. So make sure you go snag that REO slide deck and book. And again, this is you guys' last chance. If you want to join this REO Mastery University training, the REO and short sale training that Ben showed you with, you got the website right here, reomasteryuniversity.com. Click that buy now button. When you get to the order form page, make sure to type in REO Mastery, all one word, all caps. That'll get you that $500 discount, plus get you grandfathered into that Facebook group. So anyway, guys, we truly appreciate you being here. Keep kicking ass your real estate business. Much love to you all, and we will talk to you soon. Peace.
Guys, see you.